I thought he was just flirting. At least, that's what I told myself. We had known each other for years. It started with casual encounters, smiles exchanged at parties, small talk at gatherings, the kind of interactions that never seemed to amount to anything more than surface-level friendship. He was charming, always surrounded by people, his laughter echoing in the room, making everyone feel like the center of attention. I never thought much of it. He was always the guy who flirted with everyone, never seeming to take anything seriously. But that night was different. It started as a joke, like everything always did with us. He leaned in a little too close, his breath warm on my neck as he whispered something that made me laugh. I wasn't even sure why I laughed. It was just a joke, right? The kind of thing we always joked about. The kind of joke that didn't mean anything. But the way his fingers brushed against mine as he handed me the glass, the way his lips lingered a little too long when he smiled, it was all too much. My pulse quickened, my heart beating faster with every second we spent in that crowded room. "You know," he said, his voice smooth, almost teasing, "you really don't realize how attractive you are when you're trying so hard not to be." I turned to face him, unsure whether I should laugh it off or let the words sink in. His eyes were intense, a small smirk playing at the corner of his lips. I had seen that smirk before, the one that made everyone feel like they were the only person in the room. But tonight, it felt different. Tonight, it felt like it was just the two of us. "Flirting again?" I teased, trying to keep my voice light, trying to keep the distance between us. "Maybe," he said, leaning a little closer, his voice dropping lower. "Maybe I just want to see you blush." I swallowed hard, my body reacting in a way I didn't expect. The heat rising in my chest, the way my fingers trembled slightly as I held my glass, everything about the way he looked at me, the way he spoke to me, made me feel things I wasn't ready for. And yet, I didn't step back. I couldn't. The tension between us was palpable, an unspoken pull that neither of us acknowledged but both felt. His eyes locked with mine, and for a second, the world around us seemed to fade away. It was just him and me, caught in this strange, undeniable moment. "You're not shy," I said, trying to make light of the situation, but my voice came out quieter than I intended. "Not shy," he murmured, his gaze never leaving mine. "Just patient. And I know what I want." I felt my breath hitch at the words. There was something about the way he said it, something that made my skin prickle with awareness. His gaze shifted to my lips for the briefest moment, and I felt my heart skip a beat. I should have pulled away. I should have told him I wasn't interested, reminded him that this was just flirting, that this wasn't real. But I didn't. The pull between us was too strong, and for the first time, I didn't want to fight it. Without thinking, I moved closer. My body acted on its own, as if it had a mind of its own. And in that moment, I wasn't sure who was in control anymore, me or him. He leaned in slightly, his lips brushing against my ear as he spoke softly, "You don't have to pretend anymore. I see you, and I want you." His words sent a jolt of electricity through me, and I felt a surge of heat rush to my face. It wasn't just the words themselves, it was the way he said them, the way they made me feel like everything I had been holding back, everything I had been pretending not to feel, was suddenly laid bare. Before I could respond, before I could even think, he closed the gap between us, his lips pressing softly against mine. The kiss was slow at first, tentative, as if testing the waters. But the moment our lips touched, it was like the floodgates opened. All the tension, all the desire that had been building between us for so long, exploded in that one moment. His hands found my waist, pulling me closer, and I couldn't help but respond. My hands moved to his chest, feeling the heat of his skin through his shirt, the steady beat of his heart beneath my fingertips. His kiss deepened, more urgent now, and I felt myself melting into him, my body reacting to his touch in ways I didn't understand. I knew this wasn't supposed to happen. He was just flirting, right? Just teasing me like he always did. But this was different. This wasn't just flirting anymore. This was real. And as much as I tried to convince myself otherwise, I couldn't deny it. I wanted him. We pulled away briefly, both of us breathless, our faces inches apart. His lips were swollen, his chest rising and falling with each shallow breath. His eyes locked onto mine, dark with desire. I felt my pulse race, my heart pounding in my chest as I stared back at him. "Do you want this?" he whispered, his voice rough with desire. I couldn't answer right away. I didn't know what to say. All I could do was nod, my body betraying me as I closed the distance between us once more. The kiss lingered in the air between us, thick with an intensity one had never experienced before. I could feel every part of my body alive with electricity as his lips brushed against mine once more, gentle yet insistent. There was no hesitation now. His hands moved slowly down my sides, his touch tender but full of intention, each caress stirring something deep inside me, something I wasn't sure I was ready to confront. I felt my heart racing, the sound of it pounding in my ears. This wasn't the easy, playful flirting I had convinced myself it was earlier. This was something else entirely, something deeper, more urgent. His touch was leaving me breathless, and I was beginning to lose myself in it, in him, in the way his presence made me feel like I was the only one in the room. I pulled back slightly, my lips tingling from his kiss, trying to regain some sense of control. But Jason wasn't having it. He gently cupped my face, his thumb brushing along my lower lip in a way that made my body tighten in response. "You don't have to fight it," he murmured, his voice low, intimate. "I can see how much you want this." I didn't know what to say, couldn't find the words to explain what was happening to me. I had spent so long telling myself that this was just harmless fun, just a bit of flirting, but now everything felt different. His touch, his words, they shattered everything I thought I knew about us, about myself. "I shouldn't," I whispered, though my body was already betraying me. My hands were at his chest now, moving of their own accord, pushing aside the fabric of his shirt as I felt the heat of his skin beneath my fingertips. "Don't think," he said, his lips brushing against my ear as he held me closer. "Just feel." His words sent a wave of heat through my body, and I couldn't hold back any longer. I closed the distance between us again, my lips capturing his with a hunger that surprised me. Jason responded instantly, pulling me closer, his hands tangled in my hair as he kissed me deeply, more urgently now. I could feel the tension building inside me, like a pressure that had been building for far too long and was finally breaking free. Every touch of his was sending shockwaves through my body. His hands traced the curve of my back, his fingers slipping beneath the waistband of my jeans, and I gasped as his touch brushed against my skin, igniting something I couldn't suppress. The kiss deepened, and I felt a wave of desire wash over me. I was caught in it, drowning in it, and I didn't care. I had never felt more alive, more aware of my own body, of the way it was responding to him. The world outside seemed to disappear as we moved together, as if nothing else mattered but the feeling of him, of his lips, his hands, his body pressed against mine. "Are you sure?" Jason whispered, pulling back just enough to look at me, his eyes dark with desire. "Because once we go down this path, there's no going back." I couldn't speak. My breath was ragged, my heart racing, and all I could do was nod, the answer already clear in my mind. There was no turning back now. There was no resisting this, no pretending that I wasn't feeling the same thing he was. Jason's smile was slow, almost predatory as he kissed me again, his hands sliding down my body with purpose. I could feel the heat rising between us, an overwhelming wave of passion that made my mind spin. His lips left mine, trailing down my neck, and I couldn't suppress the soft moan that escaped me as his mouth found the sensitive spot just below my ear. I arched into him, my fingers clutching at his shirt as if I needed something to hold on to. He responded to every movement of mine, his body pressing against mine as if he couldn't get close enough. "Let me show you," he whispered, his lips grazing the edge of my jaw, "how much I've wanted this." His hands moved to my waist, lifting me up and pressing me against the wall. I felt the shift, the change in the air between us, and I couldn't help but surrender to it, to the way he was making me feel. His lips were on mine again, more desperate now, and I responded eagerly, my hands slipping beneath his shirt, feeling the muscles beneath my fingertips. The heat of his skin, the strength in his body, everything about him was making my pulse race. I wanted this. I needed this. My body moved instinctively, my hands tugging at his pants as I pulled him closer. He groaned against my lips, his hands sliding down to guide me, showing me exactly what he wanted. There was no hesitation now, no doubt. It was just the two of us, lost in this moment of raw, unrestrained desire. When we finally collapsed together, everything else seemed to fade away. It was just the two of us, our bodies, our breath, our heartbeats in sync. We moved together slowly, savoring every inch of the connection, the intimacy of it all. I couldn't get enough of him, of the way he made me feel, of the way our bodies fit together like we had been meant for this. It was messy, it was imperfect, but it was real. And that was all that mattered in that moment. When it was over, when we were both lying there, our bodies tangled together, I didn't know what to say. What could I say? Everything had changed between us in ways I couldn't put into words. The night had started as just another flirtatious encounter, a joke between friends. But now, everything felt more complex, more intense. The lines between us were gone, erased in the heat of the moment. Jason kissed my forehead gently, his hand resting on my waist as he pulled me closer. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft, almost tender. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I was more than okay. I was alive in a way I hadn't been before. "Yeah," I whispered. "More than okay." We lay there together, the quiet of the room enveloping us, both of us unsure of what came next, but content in the moment. I had thought he was just flirting, just playing around. But as I lay there in his arms, I realized that everything had changed. And I wasn't sure where it would lead, but for the first time, I didn't care. Whatever happened next, I knew that I had crossed a line I could never uncross.